Hi, and welcome to the Law Simplified. I'm Shavin Bandadanayaka. This is a practical guide to learning public law. If we consider that every single type of law in any jurisdiction is either meant to create or regulate relationships between entities, then contract law, for instance, would be made to create and regulate relationships between citizens, between individuals, based on the obligations that they set up for themselves. Whereas criminal law, for instance, would be in relation to the creation as well as the regulation of laws and the related punishments as it indicates towards citizens by state or the government. Similarly, public law could be considered as the creation and regulation of laws that govern the different entities of state itself, namely the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. On the one hand, the ways in which the legislature can pass laws and the limits therein, the ways in which the executive can execute those laws and the limits therein, as well as how the judiciary may interpret those laws and whether they were used and properly executed by the executive or whether there was an overstepping of the line. In essence, public law by and large considers the interdependence as well as the separation of powers between these three entities on the one hand and their relationship with the citizen, as well as the powers vested with the citizen in order to make sure their rights are met. Now, unlike many other subjects that you will encounter in your law degree, public law, along with later subjects such as administrative law and jurisprudence, focus more on the theoretical and critique rather than that of scenarios being tackled. Therefore, if we take the different topics that are outlined in this subject, such as the Constitution, separation of powers, rule of law, parliamentary sovereignty, royal prerogative, human rights, and judicial review, while it is possible to understand each individual topic in isolation, in order to succeed in this subject at large, you need to have a broad understanding of how each topic works with one another. Thus, while you'll see that there are connections that exist with one or more of these topics, the student that goes above and beyond is someone who understands and appreciates the deep-rooted meaning of how each individual topic is connected to every other topic as well. So, for instance, a question on the Constitution is very rarely relegated to only the Constitution. While most questions would, for example, revolve around the narrative of, if we take the UK as a jurisdiction, the anatomy of it. In other words, what sources make up the legal and non-legal aspects of the UK's constitution, the characteristics that define the personality of the UK's constitution, and what reforms, if at all, have happened over the past several centuries to make it so that the UK's constitution is what it is today. On its own, there might be a situation where you have to have a broad stroke understanding and perhaps a focus on each individual sub-area. But as a good student, someone who has understood that public law goes beyond merely explanation, so to speak, of each individual area of the Constitution, you would also have to have an understanding of how exactly, for instance, separation of powers is maintained in an uncodified situation, or how rule of law is maintained when you might not have a solid document which you would usually find in a codified constitution, or for that matter, where parliamentary sovereignty has taken the place of a constitutional supremacy. What you would need to then understand is that the most important thing to remember when preparing for public law is to keep in mind this interdependence of each individual topic. Right, to recap, when preparing and studying for public law, always keep in mind that it relates to, on the one hand, the relationships between the three arms of government, namely the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary, as well as the relationship the citizen has with the state. When you prepare for this subject, it's more about how each individual topic, such as constitution, separation of powers, rule of law, parliamentary sovereignty, human rights, and judicial review, would intermingle and be interdependent with one another rather than simply considering each one in isolation. If you'd like to set up a fast track or a masterclass program, make sure you reach out to me through the links in the description below. I've launched a brand new online law school platform where you can get access to pre-recorded fast track and masterclass courses, webinars, and live question and answer sessions. You can access that from the link that will appear on screen right now. But until the next time that we meet, have fun, stay safe, and as always, obey the law.